how do you redesign your own work?
If I gotta do it, I'ma do the most. Since they paid to see a show, got the South overflow, yeah. If I gotta do it, I'ma do the most. Watching me to take note, raise a toast to the goat, yeah.
I will also tell you why we didn't use the design system in a huge project like this. In 2016, we designed something pretty groundbreaking for the fintech market in Europe. A platform where investors could browse and invest in mutual funds. And at that time, no platform exactly like this existed. This was also our very first fintech project of that scale. We worked on an FX section of one local bank before, and we redesigned the mobile apps from the visual side for 3 different banks, but this was by far the largest undertaking the company ever did. It was new. We had absolutely no playbook here. We had to rely on our own design intuition and very bold plans from the client. In the process, we came up with a couple patterns that now became standard in the industry. And it's really nice to see some of the ideas that we came up with 10 years ago are still being used by the biggest and greatest of the industry almost worldwide now. But then, in 2023, we returned to our own work. The client called and asked us about making 2.0 version of the platform. The question was which innovations and ideas stood the test of time, how to evaluate that, and what things can be improved greatly given the technology progress, the market progress, and many different things that changed since the first version of the platform was announced. That redesign of our own work taught us a lot, and it also showed us that there can be a design pattern that you weren't expecting that becomes beloved by the users. We'll get to that pattern later in the video. Let's dive in. Our very first design was kind of like a leap into the unknown. But some of the patterns, especially around data visualization, for which we also coded the interactions back in 2016, were really good, and they stood the test of time. We still see ideas like that being used all across the industry, and we realized that on some of them we can improve them slightly, but there are different areas of the platform that deserve even more attention. The market grew and changed. Mobile became even more dominant, and it also changed some of the desktop patterns with it. Users expected speed and clarity. And being the first platform of its kind in 2016 was one thing, but now with more competition and with more ideas and concepts and even ways to invest, great UX had to be there every step of the way, coming from all the past years of learning what people liked and disliked about the previous platform. And the tools available to us as designers also changed. With some of these AI tools, we became even more powerful. So we weren't just redesigning KupFundusz. We were also redesigning our own design processes for big platform work. The challenge was clear. Find out what worked best and what didn't, keep the stuff that was good, and modify the stuff that could be improved. That sounds very simple and it sounds pretty obvious on paper. But how do you find out what can be improved? Thankfully, the client had direct access to the users and they kept asking them questions, so we had a huge database of information to rely on and a lot of professional guidance from the client side. So we identified the 4 main core areas of the redesign. Beginners still needed more guidance, and right now probably even more guidance than before. Experienced investors wanted faster, more powerful tools. The brand itself needed a slightly stronger voice to stand out from all the other fintech brands out there. And the mobile experience had to slowly get to being as powerful as the desktop. Brand refresh. We started with the brand. The foundations from 2016 were pretty strong, and we had feedback that the users grew accustomed to the logo and to the branding itself, and they actually loved that low mark. It became recognizable, it became associated with investing in mutual funds in Central Europe. But also those shapes, colors, gradients, roundness became a definition of the entire company. Because KupFundusz is just one of their brands. They have multiple, and we helped them craft the visual identity for all of them. So we couldn't just throw it all out and redesign just this one brand with a completely different mindset. It had to be old and new and matching at the same time. So we modernized it. Sharper typography, slightly different shapes, but keeping the same idea of shapes guiding the eye of the user, and more vibrant colors. The logo also had to match stylistically and visually the conference that is tied to it that happens every year, the landing page. Then we had to tackle some of the flows in terms of onboarding and the landing page funnel. In the original version, most people followed the exact same path, with just a couple of subtractions if you've chosen that you're not a power user. So basically, most of the path was exactly the same, but you got less screens to go through if you're a beginner. In this redesign, we created distinct pathways that were also divided by colors. Green for beginners and purple for experts. Beginners got even more guidance, reassurance, and explanations, and the language used to communicate all those things was stripped of all the jargon. Just as easy to understand as possible. Our users got speed, shortcuts, and if you want to work with us, we mostly work with smaller scale startups, so you can go to squareblack.com and let's talk. We'll be happy to boost your brand as well and help you grow. We also restructured the landing page around a simple principle. Show value, then clear doubts. If you've been on the channel for a while, you probably heard me talk about it over and over and over, that there are no landing page blueprints. If somebody's selling you a blueprint for a landing page design, it's a lie. The true blueprint for a successful landing page is different every time, but it has two things in common. It has to start with showing how you solve a specific problem people have, and then it has to clear all the potential doubts that they have. That's the same loop in every successful website out there. So instead of overwhelming users with options and information, we divided some of the processes into separate landing pages so they don't have to read the stuff that's completely not interesting to them. The conference also led to a lot of good discoveries. By the way, we also worked on the design for the entire conference and their websites, but that's a whole other story. Investors in attendance at the conference were also sharing feedback on how they are using the platform and what they like and what they dislike about it. And all that information came back to us, because every year we get new data to back our design choices. One key funnel was shortened by around 40%, and instead of angering or alienating the expert or the pros, it made them even happier. Let's talk about mobile. As you probably know, we always design mobile last but best. I talked about it multiple times in my previous videos that even if you have 95% mobile coverage, you should still design for the desktop first and then create a dedicated mobile experience. So I'm not gonna repeat myself here. The problem with this platform was different. The problem was that in 2016, the phones were smaller and people were less trusting of paying large sums of money over a mobile phone. Both of these things have changed. Phones are now way bigger and people are conducting transactions on the phone all the time. But how do you fit a complex, huge platform full of options onto a small device? Instead of shrinking the experience from desktop to mobile and doing the classic boring responsive, if A is on the left and B is on the right, then let's just put it one under the other and make a super long scrolling page. Nah. We decided it needs a different direction. So we made a mobile experience with a different mindset. Larger touch targets, for sure. Bigger and more visible graphs, obviously. But we also redesigned it with the thought of not having to scroll for hours just to get to the bottom of the page. And that was pretty tricky. One layout we nearly discarded for the desktop has proven to work really great for mobile, and that had a very significant retention boost, which only proves that the experience on mobile shouldn't be the exact same experience as on desktop, just smaller. It has to be designed for mobile in the first place. But with complex platform, with a lot of moving parts, you really need to design the big and complex first, because then you'll realize what the people use, how they use it, and how to modify it to fit the best possible experience on a smaller screen. Systemizing. Another big change is scale. Back in 2016, we designed every screen of the platform by hand. We ended up with 150 different sketch artboards. In 2024, we built a whole design library. All the components were responsive and updatable and tied together into views and then later into screens. It was a systemized library, but per breakpoint. Just pulling the main brand elements like colors and fonts, but not the sizes, down from a single source and then combining it per breakpoint into a cohesive experience designed just for that breakpoint. Because being universal and adaptable to different resolutions is just a path towards being a boring interface that has to sacrifice on both ends. So did it work? Well, the results speak for themselves. Take a look. Views are up 400%, clicks are up 350%, registrations are up 270%, and time on site went up by 60%. So how does it feel to redesign yourself? How does it feel to rework your own work and admit to yourself that some of the stuff that you did before wasn't as good in hindsight? Well, the first thing you need to do to successfully do something like this is not to beat yourself down, because now you know a lot more things that you knew 6 or 7 years ago, so it's obvious that your current work is gonna be better. That's how design works. But you also need to be aware that some things change. Mobile devices got bigger. People got more trusting of investing large sums of money on a mobile device, which led to some significant changes that we probably couldn't have done back in 2016. But in some cases, you have to admit that some of the decisions that we made weren't as perfect. That's the hardest part. But you really can't be too attached to your designs. You need to be able to look at them critically and just throw some of them out. Because if you now see the flaws, it doesn't matter how much time you spent on them and how attached you are to them. And looking back and analyzing our previous work gave us a trove of ideas. It was an awesome process and a little scary at times, but I feel like this time we made the platform the best thing that it could possibly have been. For the client, it wasn't just a visual refresh. It was a business shift. And for us at SquareBlack, it was an experience of humility, but also understanding ourselves, our own decisions, and using research to guide the new decisions based on the new data that appeared. And if you have that right approach, it can really move the numbers and you end up with an awesome redesign. Design is the core of what we do at SquareBlack. If you want help with your brand, your app, or your website, including visual overhauls or conversion growth, let us know. Link to the website in the description, and you can also read the full case study there.